Welcome back to the Innovative Agency, everybody. It's Sharon Toerek here with you again, and I am extremely excited about today's conversation. We have a lot of fabulous guests on the show, but as I was having a conversation with them before we just hit record, we're going to have a conversation today that we haven't really had on the show in a while, and that's about the people who own agencies, run agencies, and sort of control this ecosystem that you're all doing business in. And so I am thrilled to welcome two powerful women agency owners today to the show. Christy Hiler. Christy owns Cornett, which is based out of Louisville, Kentucky, and Jean
Thank you.
Freeman, who is a second time guest on the show, but it's been a really, really long time since we've talked. And it wasn't about this topic the last time we had a conversation, who co-founded Zambezi, which is a West Coast agency. So Christy, Jean, thank you so much for making time to be on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward. You're welcome. So you're both running your own agencies. You both got busy, full lives, families. There's a lot of causes or impact you could focus your attention on making outside of your business lives. Why did you decide to pick up this work? And then let's get into what you're doing with Own It, because I think it's such an exciting body of work and I want more people to know about it. So, Christy, I'll throw it to you. What made you decide to pick sort of this torch up with everything else you've got going on in your life?
Well, I had just purchased Cornett. This was about 3 years ago,
Hmm.
3.5 years ago now. And I was going through the process of getting certified through WeBank, which ironically, just earlier today, I was going through the process to recertify because you do that every year. And it is, Jean can tell you, it is quite a cumbersome process. And somewhere in that, I started just wondering how many other female agency owners are there? And I asked the question and couldn't get an answer. And so I just kept asking the question to everybody in this industry. I thought, somebody has to have an answer. And eventually 4As gave me a list and they admitted, Chrissy, this is not going to be a accurate look because we're not actively tracking it, but this is the list of agencies we know are owned by females. And there were 200 agencies on that list. And I, going through the process of better understanding how many agencies are in the US, as I was taking on ownership, I understood there were nearly 20,000 agencies. So 200 was an absolutely unacceptable number. And so in my mind, I thought it was just because nobody was tracking it. And so I thought, great, I will start tracking it because that number I just wasn't going to be able to move past. Honestly, I could not accept that. And so I've got a really fantastic web team here at Cornett. And so I turned to them and said, can you build a site, make it really easy instead of having to go through this process of getting certified, which actually you also in that certification, you have to be a majority owner, so 51%. And
Right.
to me, I wanted to be able to recognize any level of ownership. So we built this site that would make it easy. All you have to do is let us know the name of your agency, your name as the female agency owner, where you are. And we do collect a little bit more information, but that's not even required. So we have more data just on the size of these agencies in terms of revenues, also in terms of number of employees. We don't publish all of that. We just publish the female agency owner name and the agency name, and where they're located. So through that, before I launched the website to capture that information, I reached out to Jean because Jean was listed through my Googling as the largest female agency owner. And that's who I wanted to talk to before I pushed this thing live. So I reached out to Jean. She was equally furious when she learned that there were only 200. And she said, what can I do? I want to lock arms. And so that was the beginning of Own It.
There's so much to unpack here about these numbers and what I can only guess might have been kind of some of the feelings you were having as you were seeing the data, or let's just talk about the lack of data in the first place. The fact that the leading trade organization for agencies didn't really kind of even have the number. It's kind of like, here's what we've got. We're not super confident. Do what you will, with it. You might want to verify. It's just stunning to me. It's that to me is as telling as anything else about how the industry has looked at this historically. I was mentioning earlier to both of you that I've done a fair amount of advocacy work for entrepreneurs and small businesses in general, policies and stuff like that at the federal level. I had no idea. I mean, I kind of knew what the women-owned business statistic looked like, which is closer to 40%. But do either of you have any ideas or theories about why in this industry in particular, it's so far, far, far below what the averages look like for women-owned companies in general? And Jean, I think I'll throw that one over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I mean, it's low because I think the advertising industry is just also a microcosm about just women in American society in terms of business and their place at the table. This is not a new story within women in film and entertainment, women and women's health and the investment that has been lacking on that side. We're seeing it, all of a sudden, which is needed in women's sports. That coming to the forefront. So, I just think advertising follows that same recipe, unfortunately, of the trade groups are really meant to service large global holding companies. And the majority, as you just stated, with 40% of all businesses are owned by women. So then when you kind of look across really more from a revenue perspective, it's not to that same magnitude. I think payrolls are under like 5% from an overall revenue perspective. Right. So that inequity in terms of the numbers versus impact has kind of been a consistent story. So the trade groups are going to focus on the businesses that are really more from the revenue perspective. And as an independent agency owner too, I've always felt at times that the advertising industry, for certain facets of it, like they don't fit for my needs. I don't know. It's a much different aspect from larger global agencies or holding company agencies. So I think unfortunately advertising is just following a similar step. When Christy reached out to me, as she said, Christy had done a lot of already the legwork. She had really envisioned what this was going to look like, how the database was going to be structured. Christy also hosts a fabulous podcast, which has interviewed over 100 agency owners and their stories. And I think just even that, the idea for Own It was really to bring visibility to a small community, but a very mighty one, and one that we want to continue to see. And we want to be supporters of their growth. We want to applaud the continued impact that they have in the industry. We had our first in-person agency summit in New York in March, and really just going through the accolades of our now growing, database of over 600 agencies. The impact is tremendous. I mean, I think if you look across, from the standpoint of like most recently small agency awards, women ownership is very well represented. And that's something I think from a storytelling perspective that, Christy and I really believe in. We really believe in the power of getting these stories out, which then also just, again, is what the idea is to have further business scale. So we can take a lot of our smaller agencies to mid-size agencies to global agencies. And that's going to come through just getting more of the support and networking that necessarily some of the trade organizations and industries have been kind of leaving women-owned agencies behind.
Right.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, yes, it's the opportunities. You asked, how did we get here? Why are we here? A lot of that is because, as Jean said, we didn't have a seat at the table. We didn't have a seat, like we didn't have a presence on the stages. We didn't have a presence in the press. And a lot of that is starting to change. And there has been over, I would say the past 10 years, especially, great progress in seeing more women step into the position of leadership, which is the training ground. But what we really believe is the ultimate is ownership. And
Right.
so we want to just kick that bar up a notch and say the finish line, isn't leadership. Yes, because there was so much talk, and there continues to be so much talk, like we got to get more women in positions of leadership. Yes, but also ownership. And so we just wanted to show that there are women who are doing it and they're seeing tremendous success. And that story, we believe you kind of gotta see her to be her. Like modeling is really important. And we didn't have a lot of that in this industry, which is why we are where we are. But now we are putting and ensuring that more women are on the stages and they are in the press and they are on the awards lists and their businesses are growing, and other women seeing that is going to lead to more women feeling confident to step into that position.
I have always wondered, it seems to me from having, built a law firm that serves independent agencies, a lot of owners, male and female or non-binary, who end up in the role of ownership in their agencies were kind of accidental entrepreneurs. They maybe were a key employee of the agency, or perhaps they, were a creative who ended up wanting to start their own shop or something, but they didn't really plan at the beginning of their careers to sort of be entrepreneurs. And I wonder if that could account for some of the distance between this number that's closer to 40% for women-owned companies in general in the country and this tiny, tiny, tiny number for women-owned agencies. I don't know. It's just something that occurred to me as I was looking at the statistics. I wonder if it's because a lot of times ownership feels unintentional in the independent agency world. At least when I talk to agency owners, they didn't start out to found an agency. Some did, but many didn't. So I don't know. I don't know if you guys have thoughts about that.
Well, one thing I would say I think is going to benefit the industry, and I would say further the initiative that has very much caught fire, is that a lot of people are fed up with the holding company model in this industry now. I mean, there are very talented, sharp women who do not feel like they have to stay and now feel like they have great options and great support to go out on their own. And so I think I don't know that I would say, I don't know that I could speak as much to the accidental, but I don't know that many of them plan it, but I do think many of them, when they decide they want something else, and sometimes that can come from life circumstances, but sometimes it can come from career circumstances as well. But something is driving them to make a change, and then they consider, could I do this? And many are finding, yes, in fact, I can.
Mhm.
And now there is this group that can say, and here's how you do this, and here's how you do this, and make sure you set it up from the beginning in a way that's going to lead to greater success.
Right. That's a really great segue because I want to talk about, actually, I want you all to talk about the work that you're doing with Own It and sort of what your vision is for how you can help more women-owned agencies be counted, or how we can lift up women who will be future agency owners and give them sort of the support and the tools that they need to get there faster. So talk a little bit about what your vision is for putting all these great agency owners together in one place.
I would say, this has really been more of like an organic grassroots effort, as you said, as you noted. Christy and I run agencies.
I know.
So this is more from a true passion that we have in believing in the power of women business ownership. So with that the goal has always been to how can we continue to bring more to the table? How can we continue to bring light and camaraderie and community to a group that really hasn't had that? And I think that's really more, I think, where what fills Christy and our like cups is like seeing women form connection, see that they're not alone on an island, forming these ways that they can be, while, at times, like, sure, like there's a lot of maybe overlap in services, but everyone really values each other's experience and can learn from each other. So, and I think the idea, as we know, as we've seen through our data, is a lot of the agencies are small. They're less than 10 people. They have, sub 3 million revenue. And so really what is the goal is they want to grow their businesses. They want to have a larger impact. They want, to create, women start businesses for a reason because corporate America was not created for women by women. So setting their own standards and creating their own way in their own path for their families, for their communities. This is why women go into business. So we've really talked a lot about how can we help them scale? So whether it's the idea of how, the different, if you kind of look at it, the different phases of starting an agency and starting a company has its own set of realities around it and learnings that you need to go through. Scaling a business, it requires a whole different type of kind of approach. And Sharon, as you've kind of mentioned, with like, from legal setups to MSA templates, and when you're starting to work with small emerging companies to global companies and how you kind of structure that, and then selling, which is kind of a little bit of the ultimate aspect of how do I kind of go through that process. So we've kind of viewed it through that lens, and continuing to get feedback from our community on what kind of content they want to see. But the resounding thing is everyone loves getting together and they love learning from each other and they love being in the room with other women owners to learn and to get that energy for what, as we know, when we go back into our day-to-day slog of owning and running a business, having that tribe around you to know that you can rely on, I think is something that continues to, be the driving effort of why we're, having this be our second job.
No kidding. Your third job is if you throw the kids in there too. They're kind of a
Right.
time job as well. I've got to imagine you're hearing just the most incredible stories from some of the women that you're bringing into your community. And what I'm curious about is, are you seeing any patterns to the issues that you hear or the stories that you hear them share about the challenges they're having building their agencies, whether it's, I don't know, access to capital, or whether it's, building a leadership team, or what it might be. I think that there's strength in hearing one another's stories and knowing that you're not alone in the particular experience that you're undergoing right now as the owner of your own agency. And have you noticed any patterns in all the storytelling that I'm sure you're hearing by bringing all these incredible women together?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think a lot of these women are coming from all parts of this business and were tremendously successful in that previous role, right? You have women who were chief creative officers or ECD, like wonderful creative roles at big agencies, or, leading more on the account side or the client relationship side and leading a lot of those parts of the business, or from media. They're coming from all parts of this business, which is really fantastic to see. But what we all see very quickly is doing that role and ownership are just really different. And what is great about this community, and I think, again, as Jean said, it's almost like she and we just kind of stepped on something that was already like waiting to explode. It was bubbling under the surface, and it is this need to better understand more of the business. We don't get trained on the business in this business. You just don't. In each of these roles, you do that role, but not really. There's no curriculum. There's nobody out there saying, this is how you step into ownership. And here's all the things that you need to think about at these different stages. And that's kind of the gap that we're filling. But also, so there's like the actual job and the tasks, and making, more resources available, resources that can be shared, like, what you do. I mean, that's, we want to make sure that these owners know who to turn to for different pieces of their business that they don't have to do themselves necessarily or bring in-house. So that's one piece. But then I would also say a lot of times you have to grow into being the face of your agency and being able to tell your story, get comfortable on those stages, putting yourself out there. It's sometimes not as easy for us to do that and to feel comfortable and confident doing that, which is a piece of the podcast too. Tell your story. We want to give women a platform to share why they are doing this, what motivated them, where did they come from? And it is really incredible to see how, just remarkable these women are and their experience is. But also to recognize that a lot of us are just, people too. We're moms, and, we enjoy hiking and cooking and traveling. Like, it's been really fun too. And I think that piece is important for other people to see, because there isn't like this one way or, this super polished person that you have to be in order to do this. I think that facade, we're just trying to break apart, because that doesn't feel achievable. And we want to show like the real and what's really possible, and that you can be you, and that actually is going to lead to great success. And there's so there's three parts of what we do. One is the list, second is the podcast, and third is the summit, bringing these women together and sharing information and making those connections. Because as Carol Williams said to me, who I really adore her and appreciate the wisdom that she brings to this community. But she had once said, the higher the mountain you climb, the fewer the people. And that can feel really lonely. Sometimes this position can feel lonely, but this community has really changed that for all of us.
Yeah. Leadership is lonely. And I think something you just said, Christy, just drove home for me that there's a lot of diversity within the group of women owners of agencies too. We are not all the same, right? We don't all have the same style of leadership. We don't all have the same priorities for our businesses. They don't hold the same spot in all of our lives equally. It's very different. And so creating a community where all of that can be celebrated in a space that feels like you do look to the left and the right of you and see business owners, agency owners who look more like you than the rest of the world does, since it's only 1% we're talking about, apparently. So I think that it's important to keep that in mind too. Diversity means a lot of different things. And even women as a group of owners can be diverse and have different priorities, but there's a shared experience and a common ground that is different in a community of women business owners than I think in a community of entrepreneurs in general. At least that's been my experience. And so I think what you're doing is tremendous. And I want more women agency owners to know about it. So I guess my two questions for you. First of all, how can women agency owners help you in your work and getting the word out? And second of all, where can they find out more about all the terrific things that you're doing, and plug into them?
Well, first, and this is step one, always I send people to untilyouownit.com.
Mhm.
If you are a female agency owner, get on that list. Make sure you and your agency are on the list. The most important, we want accurate number. We want data is so important because
Yeah.
we have to know where we are, right, in this industry and be able to track it, our progress. And we're not where we want to be. I mean, listen, 600 is greater than 200, but
Yeah.
far from where we want to be. We do believe it's possible to be closer to the general population of business.
Mhm.
So want to work until we get to 40, and then, we won't exist anymore. Won't that be great?
Yes, it'll be great if you work yourselves out of that role, right?
Exactly. That's
I-
that's what we're doing. So so until you're going to get on that list, and then also follow and listen to the podcast and share those stories. And if you know anybody that's not on that list, if you know a female agency, if you look at that list and you see that your friend or somebody else that you're familiar with isn't there, get them on that list and
Yeah.
then send them my way. The next piece is we want to share their story, and give them that platform, and then bring them in to this community and connect them with others. And you can do that on all podcast platforms and also LinkedIn. We're really active there.
Well, I can attest, I haven't listened to as many episodes as I would like to listen to and as I intend to listen to, but the content's, I mean, just hearing the stories, it's terrific because the pathways that some of these women have taken are just so interesting.
Mhm.
They're entrepreneurship stories. I mean, and if entrepreneurship is your jam at all, and it is mine, then you're just going to be so impressed with the things that these owners have done and are continuing to do as they build their agencies. So, what do you see the horizon looking like over the next 18 to 24 months, in your industry overall and for women who own agencies in it? I always like to kind of ask people what they're seeing around the corner. And so I'd love to hear from both of you as agency owners. What are you seeing out there? What are you prioritizing in your own agencies, as you plan, for the near future?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's ever been a better time to be an independent agency than where we're in right now. Coming out of COVID, I think playbooks were kind of thrown out of the window. Let's try some new things. Independent agencies are smaller and more nimble and can and also just can be closer to solving the problem. So I think you've seen, and there's been a lot that have come up, women owned and just new independent agencies in the last few years. So I think that'll be an interesting trend to continue to see as that goes. The holding company model, I mean, you saw there's Google antitrust, just launched, just came out today about rebates and is how how is that going to continue to move forward in the business of large global advertising contracts? So I just think that it's that optimism to see the potential is there. And I think brands are starting to change and wanting to do that. And especially as you're coming into more of emerging, areas that we're coming into AI. I think the more smaller, more nimble companies will be the ones that can solve that quicker with brands. So there's just a lot of change, and I think it's more a lot of times, the hardest part is just starting. I think it's a Mark Twain kind of saying of like, just starting an agency at times can seem daunting, but because it's really, I mean, where it's a service business, you talk about like capital required. you can test and learn as you're doing that. So that's the other thing that we always encourage and have forums with, early stage agency founders to continue to test and learn on what is the most optimal service offering for their agency and business, and how to continue to see that, because it's an easier, quote unquote, business to start. And it's desperately needed within, as fragmentation and social is happening. So again, I just think it's opportunity, seeing it as an opportunity, and getting a business strategy that aligns with it.
Mhm.
I agree with you entirely about the timing. I think that there hasn't been a greater example in a while than the example of AI implementation and experimentation today, for opportunity creation for entrepreneurial size agencies. You are all sitting in a massive driver's seat in terms of the ability to teach your clients about how AI can further their business result. They don't know. The large brands, it will take them forever to figure it out. Yeah, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of resources to throw at it. They've also got a lot of politics and a lot of policy and a lot of, unfortunately, lawyers and procurement people slowing them down. And so the opportunities for you to be, in the teacher role, in the consulting role, I think any small agency can out consult Deloitte on implementing AI in marketing. Um, so it's a fabulous opportunity, and it's just one of many. So I
Mm.
agree with you. The timing is great for independent agencies, and you can move fast and you can help your clients move faster too. So I love that prediction. How about you, Christy?
Yeah, I would just build on that. I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for independent agencies with honestly bigger brands too. They're moving their business. They want nimble. They want really dedicated teams, and that's the other piece. I think right now we're seeing a lot of opportunity to get really talented people. There's a lot of movement happening, not just on the client side, but also um, on the staffing and resource side. So I think for us, our future at Cornett is really focused on just getting better, just doing better and better work. The work is our beacon, and that's what, drives all of us. We want to be doing that great work, and there's great opportunities with brands to do it. There's also great opportunities to build out the team, as those opportunities come. So, and I think create different kind of spaces that can hold people. I think that, especially as we think about the female agency owner, we're really good at that. And if you just look at the numbers, it is, and I say this a lot, one of the biggest barriers to stepping into ownership is just confidence that you can and will be successful, which is, in my mind, so ridiculous now. I mean, I've had the same issue. So
Right. Oh,
this
yeah,
isn't
all of us
pointing any
did.
fingers, other than, it took me some time to build that confidence to be able to do it. But here's the thing, there is proof that women are not only as, but more successful in this role, more successful in terms of just financial success, but also just being able to be a place where people and other brands and partners come to stay. We hold people well. So
Well,
that,
I know. I think that one of the reasons I love serving this industry is because of the impact it has on commerce. Of course, we help our clients make a lot of money, but culture. And I just feel like women leaders just have this, and we're all different from each other, blessedly so, I think. But women leaders have this ability to just pull out the best in people, and serve them in different ways and meet them where they are. And that is a skill that is so important in a creatively led industry, right? Is to bring the best out in your people. It's important in any business, but in a business where your product is so visible as an expression of creativity, right? Even if it's an email sequence, it takes a lot of creativity to get an effective one out there. So I think women are just great at bringing out that helping people shine and, you know, however, whatever that means for them. So
Yeah, and Sharon, that is going to further the Own It mission too, because we don't want to see women leave this industry at the rates that they historically have. We want
Mhm.
them to stay in this business, and we want to set them up and teach them how to own it themselves someday. So
Yeah. I love it. Well, so untilyouownit.com, everybody who is a woman agency owner, wants to support a woman agency owner, please tell your friends about it. Please let them know that this is a growing, thriving community that needs you, and you need them because we all need each other. We've got to get this number up. 1% is it's weak tea and it's not representative of the impact that we have on the industry. So I'm certainly happy to get the message out there. And I'm thrilled we had a chance to learn more about the work that you all are doing and the movement that you've started. And so I'm super happy to support it. So thank you both for being with me today and talking a little bit about it. I really appreciate it.
thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it's been
Sharon.
my pleasure. All right, everyone. Until the next time, everybody stay well. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Well, stay well until then.